In the Torah reading of Parshas Tetzaveh, the Jewish people are commanded by God to build the Mishkan, the Tabernacle in the desert. There's a lot of different Torah portions that talk about all of the different instructions, materials, the ingredients that were needed to build, all of the different buildings, utensils, garments that were needed by the Jewish people to construct this edifice for a house of God in the desert. And I want to share something really interesting. You might not have thought of this before. If you take all of the ingredients, all of the materials that the Jewish people were told to put together in the desert, so there's 13 of them, but they can be broken into 3 categories. And there's a super important message in the fact that there are 3 different categories of materials that are needed for the Jewish people to build the house of God. The first category is things that the Jewish people already had: gold, silver, bronze, different colors of wool, linen, different materials like that. Those are all things that the Jewish people had in their own possessions, and they were told to donate generously to the temple so that they would have these materials. They were things that they had acquired in Egypt or brought out with them or acquired after the splitting of the sea, but they were all within that category, things that the Jewish people owned and they were told to give to the house of God. The second category is also something that they had, but it's a little bit different because the second ingredient was wood of the shittim tree, maybe acacia wood, a special type of wood, which apparently was not native to Egypt. And our sages tell us, where did they get this special type of wood, this special lumber that was needed to construct a lot of the vessels of the temple and the building of the temple itself? Well, they got it from trees that their forefather Yaakov had planted when he came down to Egypt. Hundreds of years before, when he came with his family down to Egypt, he brought with him, prophetically knowing that they would need these trees. And he brought with him this special type of tree that he planted and the Jewish people cultivated for hundreds of years. And through their tradition, they knew that when they left Egypt, they had to harvest that lumber and take those trees with them. So they carried all of this wood with them in the desert, knowing that they were going to use it to build the house of God. And that's also really surprising because they didn't even take food with them. They didn't have enough food to get through their journey in the desert. They just took a bit of matzah with them, some unleavened bread that didn't have time to rise, but this wood they took because they knew, based on their tradition, that this was going to be important. So that's the second material that they brought with them. This wood that was something that they owned, but it came from their forefathers. And the third category was something that they did not own and had to be miraculously provided. Our sages tell us that they needed to have these special stones, the Avnei Miluim and the Avnei Shoham. These were special stones, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, a whole assortment of precious and valuable stones that the Jewish people simply didn't have. Apparently, with all of the wealth that they brought out of Egypt, they did not have these special stones. And our sages tell us that it says the Nesiim brought them. Nesiim being the princes of the tribes, but it can also mean the clouds, because God miraculously arranged that the clouds should actually deposit these precious diamonds at the doorstep of, or the tent step of these princes of the tribes, and that's how they were able to bring them. So it was something that was miraculous. And there's another thing that they had to bring miraculously. There was something called the Tachash skin. Tachash was some sort of multicolored animal with one horn on its head. We might call it a unicorn, and our sages tell us that it was created specifically so that they could capture it and use it for its hide to help construct the covering of the Mishkan, and then it went extinct and was never seen again. But why? So that was also part of the third category. That was an ingredient that did not exist up until this point, and God had to miraculously create it. So again, we have 3 categories of things that the Jewish people used to construct the house of God in the desert. Things that they already owned and they had to donate from their own wealth. Something that they had to bring that their forefather had already arranged for them, a historic item, and things that were miraculously provided to them in the desert. The question is why? Why did God orchestrate that was how they were going to find all of the 3 materials or categories of materials that were needed for the desert? God could have arranged, or he could have decided, use wood that was native to Egypt. He didn't need to specifically ask for a type of wood that would only be able to be provided because Yaakov had prophetically brought that wood and they followed that tradition to bring it. That was not necessary, but it was something that God desired. And why did God arrange that in all of the vast wealth? Our sages tell us every Jewish person left Egypt and left the splitting of the sea with 90 donkeys laden with precious and valuable items. And yet they didn't have these special stones, and God had to miraculously provide them, being brought on the clouds and delivered to the tents of the princes so that they could bring them. Why did God do that? So I think the message for all of us is, God is telling us, when you build my house, there are 3 types of materials that are needed, because each one of them has a different message. And when you build your house, I want you to use those same materials as well. Those same ingredients are part of your house as well, because our houses, our homes, a Jewish home is a place where the divine presence rests. Our sages call a Jewish home a mikdash ma'at, a minor sanctuary. Just like God rested his presence amongst the Jewish people in the sanctuary in the desert and then later in Jerusalem, in every Jewish home and every Jewish family, there's also this infusion of the divine presence. And our homes are a mikdash ma. They're a minor sanctuary. And God says, take note of the 3 types of materials, the 3 ingredients that I need you to use when you build my house, because that's the same 3 categories you're going to need when you're building your house. And with that viewpoint, let's analyze what these 3 categories are. Number 1, things that you already own, your resources. And your resources means everything you own, because when you're building a marriage, when you're raising children, when you're building a Jewish home, you need everything you've got. Your time, your energy, your mental capacity, your emotional capacity, your resources, everything you have will go into building a home. The things you have, that's the first ingredient. And there's a condition within that first ingredient. The verse tells us it has to be given with nadivus halev, a generosity of heart, an excitement to give it, not begrudgingly, not because you're forced to, but because you realize this is the most important thing you can do. You have a burning desire to give everything you have to the construction of this home. That's how it was for God's home, and that's how it is for a Jewish home anywhere in the world throughout all of our history. It takes everything you've got, and you have to give it with love, with energy, with dedication, with excitement. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it does mean that that has to be how we give our resources, how we give up our entire selves to create our home. That's the first ingredient. But the second ingredient, says God, is wood that only our father could have provided, only our grandfather or great-grandfather, something that links us to the past. God says, everything you can put into the building, into your home is crucial, is wonderful, but I need you to also take something that connects you back to your history, that connects you back to your ancestors, to your mothers and fathers, grandfathers and grandmothers. Because every time the Jewish people walked into the Tabernacle, they walked into the Mishkan, they saw the building, they saw the vessels. Every time they did that, they saw, wow, this is something that our ancestors were dedicated to. This is something that is a link in the chain of the tradition. The imprint of our history is in our home. It's not just something new that we are working on. This is a link in the chain of our tradition. And when you walk into a Jewish home, anywhere in the world, it's a link in the chain of the Jewish tradition. It's not just a newfangled idea that we decided on. It's not just our own ideas and our own energies. There's a lot of that too, but there's a link to the past. We do what our grandparents did, what our great-grandparents did. We light the candles on Friday night like they've been lighting them for thousands of years. We bake the challah, we have a Shabbos table, we have a mezuzah, we have Torah, we have everything a Jewish family has had for thousands of years. And we have our own new energy as well. We have our own ways that we use technology in our service of God. We have a lot of new stuff, and that's important. But we have so much connection to the past. And that's essential, says God, because when I want you to build my home and when I want you to build your homes, I want you to do it to connect to the Jewish history, to the Jewish past, to bring the tradition into your home. That's the second ingredient. And the third ingredient, says God, that's a miracle. That's something that you can't provide by yourself, because after you invest all of your energy and all of your resources and make sure that it's linked to the past and it's connected to Jewish history, God says there's going to be a lot of challenges in your life. There's going to be financial challenges. There's going to be challenges with raising children. There's going to be challenges in your marriage. There's going to be emotional challenges. There's going to be global challenges. There's going to be so many things that make it difficult to raise a Jewish home. But says God, if you put in the first ingredient, your effort, with your heart, with dedication and love, and you put in the second ingredient and you connect your home to the history of the Jewish people, God says, I'm going to provide the third ingredient. I'm going to provide the miracles. And just like God sent the stones on the clouds, and just like God sent this animal that had never existed before to provide the third ingredient for his house, God says, I'm going to provide the third ingredient for your homes as well. I'm going to send the miracles. I'm going to send you the finances you need. I'm going to send you the resources you need. I'm going to send you the emotional strength and the energy that you need. Miracles will happen. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean there aren't going to be struggles, but God will be there, resting his presence in the Jewish home and providing them with the assistance that they need when they come with the right ingredients. Now, if I would ask you a question, of all the 13 ingredients and the 3 categories of ingredients that are the most important, that were used in the temple, which is the most important? Which is the most valuable? So a lot of people would probably jump straight to the most valuable item, the diamonds, the rubies, the emeralds, the precious stones, the most valuables of items, the ones that came through a miracle. And yet, the great Or HaChaim, one of the commentators on the Chumash, he points out when the Torah lists the 13 items, precious and valuable stones are dead last. And the first thing that the Torah brings in the list of items that were donated to the temple are the simple things, the things that the Jewish people brought by themselves, the gold, the silver, and the bronze, but the wool and the linen and the goat hair. Those all come before the diamonds and the rubies and the emeralds and every other precious stone. And the Or HaChaim says, do you know why the goat hair comes before the diamond in the list of things? Says the Or HaChaim, I'll tell you why. It's because God doesn't need your goat hair, and God doesn't need your diamonds. God needs your heart. God needs your dedication and your effort. And the things that the Jewish people brought to the temple, the things that they brought from their own resources, even if it was goat hair, that's more valuable, and that comes up higher on the list to God than the diamonds, because the diamonds were brought through a miracle. It was great that the Jewish people donated them. It was crucial, but the ingredient of our effort is worth so much more. And when you're building your home and you have your effort and your history and your miracles that God provides, so a lot of times you'll think to yourself, look at that family over there. Look at that couple. Look at that parent-child relationship. Look at that business partnership. They have it so easy. They have it so good. Their kids just do everything that they're supposed to. And they and their spouse always get along. And they have financial stability. They have the easy life. God is just showering them with miracles. And me, I struggle. Sometimes my kids don't behave. Sometimes I don't get along with my spouse. Right now I'm in a tight spot financially. Emotionally, I'm not doing so well. And people start thinking, why? Why me? Why did I do to deserve this? And God loves them better than he loves me? Like, why are they getting all the miracles and why am I just struggling to get through? But the Torah tells us what comes on the top of God's list, the ingredients in the home, the effort, and the connection to the past, and the miracles. What is the most special to God? The effort that you put in, challenges that you overcome, the struggles that you face. We're very happy for people that seem to have a perfect life. And by the way, they probably don't have a perfect life. Everybody has their challenges. Everybody. This is a small story. I know, and everyone could give their own examples, but this is just something that, for some reason, it's what I think about when I think about this. When I was in yeshiva, when I was studying, I had a friend. We got along. We were great friends. We learned together. We had some fun together. He was just a regular guy, and I was just a regular guy. There was nothing different about me and him, nothing different about our family situations. So I thought. But then one day, a few years after we had met, I was in New Jersey, and I actually spent a Shabbos at his home with his family. And I got to meet his family, I got to meet his parents. And his father was wheelchair bound. His father was extremely ill. And shortly after that, his father passed away. I had no idea. I just thought he's the same as everyone else. He doesn't have any major challenges or struggles in his life, but he did. And I just had no clue. I was totally unaware. It's a small example, but it's something that is always on my mind when I think about this. Yeah, they look perfect. Maybe I look perfect to other people, but everyone has their challenges. Everyone has their struggles, and you never know. But that being said, when you look at someone else and you see, wow, they just have it perfect, and I struggle. Why is that? The next thought should be, God loves my struggling. That's the purpose of life. That comes up at the top of the list. That is the most important and valuable thing. We don't ask for challenges, we don't ask for struggles, but when we have them, we value them and we appreciate them, because our effort, given with excitement, is truly the most valuable thing we can give.